Well, welcome. Toward the end of this series, we started having quite a few issues in terms of getting the footage in. So, instead of TechZoom today, it's the one and only, yours truly, WP. I'm providing the footage here. That was a very weird intro. Yeah, it's like a normal video now. This is me playing the game and me commentating me playing the game. What a novelty, guys. So, yeah, as we go along, I'm going to splice in these bonus parts of the cities. We originally weren't really planning on doing the cities. I don't know why. I mean, I'm sure there's been several comments at this point. People saying, are you going to do the cities? So yeah, why not? Let's do the cities. There are no hearts in cities, so if you're following along for map completion here, you're going to have a pretty good time. They're not too challenging. However, I'm not using mounts or gliding, so it's going to take me a bit longer. Two amazing things we just did. We passed a work-in-progress location for the bar brawl activity, which never got implemented, but was being talked about pre-release. And we talked about we walked past the Archery Shootout activity, which was being talked about pre-released, but was never implemented. The devs seem to have had an idea for a long time that the city, one of the reasons you'd play in the cities is not for normal combat, but kind of fun and games style stuff. But then before long, I guess they had like, and look at the roof in here, by the way, the Vigil Hall, really, really beautiful. I guess before long, they had like 6 cities on their hands, because you got 1 for each race plus Lion's Arch, and it just kind of wasn't working. Some activities did get implemented. Many years later, they updated it again, so that only 1 is available every week, every day, every week, to try and, you know, make sure that whatever is up has a population, because if there's not enough population, they're spread about billions of other activities. It's just never going to work. But it's one of the weird things that in those early convention demos, they used to do a tour of Divinity's Reach, and they would always make a point to walk up to the Archery Shootout area. Not so much the bar brawl area, which I think, you know, was still very much work in progress. But they would always make a point to walk up to that Archery Shootout and tell people how exciting and cool it was, and that we were going to be able to play there and, you know, try for high scores and stuff. And even now, 8 years later, that has never been implemented. Especially since Heart of Thorns and the introduction of proper adventures and like leaderboards and stuff. I would so love to see that come into the game. Even if only because I feel like there's a lot of people, not by the way 8 years later, 10 years later, we're in 2020, and these convention demos I'm talking about were from the year 2010, not launch year, they were 2 years prior to launch. So yeah, there were people 10 years ago, a decade ago, seeing that archery stuff, and it's not in the game. And I don't know, I just really like the idea of one day it does get added. It would make me feel so whole and complete that, you know, something that the devs really did talk a lot about pre-release actually came in. I don't know whether there's a whole thing about false advertising or whatever there. I just think of it as some interesting trivia that maybe you guys would quite like as well. So, of course, this is a big city. This is actually probably my favorite city in the game. Partly because of nostalgia, but I also just think it had the most work done on it. It's the most intricate, most detailed little environments. So many NPCs to talk to. So many buildings that you can travel around in. It's fantastic. And when they went back and added all the vistas and stuff, even these are in pretty decent areas. Not to mention post-release updates. So here we are in the Festival District. As I record this video, the Bazaar of the Four Winds was recently available, and I was kind of hoping to film this while the bazaar was up, so there'd be hot air balloons and stuff around, but the bazaar is now closed, so unfortunately it's not around. But yeah, when Winter's Day comes, they really decorate this place out. When the Lunar New Year comes, there's a certain selection of festivals that really do a lot. What you're looking at right now is just its general configuration through most of the year, which is probably the right way to do it. But, you know, part of map completion that could have been very cool would be going down into that hole on the left, because there's all kinds of walkways and balconies you can travel around on there, but just very little incentive to ever go there. There's no story quests, and there's no map completion, very few NPCs even, so it's a little bit of a shame. This district in particular, at launch, looked completely different. It was known as the Great Collapse. So the story here is years and years and years ago, they were going to theme that district as a Canthan district. There's an Ossen district, you know, for Elona. There's a district for the Ascalonians, a district for, you know, there's like the general Eastern and Western Commons. But they themed them after various peoples of Tyrian. Now, some of the peoples of Tyrian are from Cantha, which is kind of this mixed blend Asian aesthetic and East Asian aesthetic. And so that was fine until the publisher, NCSoft, kind of, I guess, we're a little bit concerned about the mixing of Korean and Japanese and Chinese art styles and stuff. And for some reason, the community's never really got the full story, just a bit of hearsay there, here and there. For some reason, the whole thing wasn't allowed to exist. So what the devs did instead is they destroyed the whole thing. Now, if you go back early enough, you can see trailers that do show you what the Cantha district would have looked like. But instead, by the time the launch came out, and even the alphas and the betas, it had been replaced by this giant chasm. And there were all these NPCs talking about like a conspiracy, why the chasm is there. Was it because of the elder dragons, and particularly probably the one of the depths, Primordus? Did it have something to do with, you know, the queen? There's all kinds of cool stuff. For years, it was just this big hole, and then eventually they then repurposed it into the festival district. All of this is really kind of funny to think about in the current day, because now we're going to Cantha, and it seems that whatever reservations NCSoft had at the time, they no longer have. My little theory about it is that NCSoft always wanted to port this game to the East. They always wanted it to be a big success in China. They always wanted to open it up to those markets. They didn't want to do anything to rock the boat, so it might not have been anything serious. It was probably just... Look at how beautiful the sea looks up there. Incredible. But they just wanted to be cautious. So they told ArenaNet to hold off. And then, of course, what did we see? After the game came out and Living World Season 1's in progress, the new player experience arrives, and they suddenly spend a ton of manpower trying to release in the East and do the Chinese client, which, you know, had its share of successes and failures. Doesn't really look like it's going to be a big phenomenon over there anytime soon. And so now, many years even after all of that, another 6 years long, NCSoft is approached about the idea of, you know, doing this Cantha stuff, and now they don't mind anymore. Because they tried to release in the East, they tried to make it big in the East, it doesn't look like it matters much anymore. So now they're happy to put Cantha back on the table. That's my little headcanon about it. I don't think that the city of Divinity's Reach is really going to change very much. Cool little POI that we just walked past there. The Skull Plaza, featured in one of the novels, Ghost of Ascalon. In fact, the novel begins behind that locked door that I was looking at. And you can kind of imagine that there's this great, immense catacomb under the city and sewers under the city. You know, perhaps connected to the Great Collapse in some way. That's all very cool. And there's actually quite a lot of story about the gate and our protagonists getting captured by the guards. I won't spoil the book. It's really right at the start of the book, so I wouldn't consider it a spoiler anyway. But yeah, it's nice to see that little area overlapped. It's funny because when writing that book, the authors actually had access to the game so that they could see what the in-game environments and stuff look like, so that they could, you know, describe the various locations to a greater accuracy. So later we're going to see a big musical instrument, and that's kind of referred to in the book. They actually got to see it in-game, and so, you know, it's very, very cohesive. So here is something that we haven't really seen on any of the other videos on the playlist, except in Bloodtide Coast we will see. There is where you have to dip into the Order of Whispers. We're actually not really in Divinity's Reach anymore. We're in the home instance in Divinity's Reach. Now, I'm playing kind of a fleshy, abominable Sylvari character, not a human, but I do get access to the human home instance if I like. It's one of the weird, like, inclusive features I kind of wish ArenaNet never put in, and it doesn't make your home instance feel very special if the race doesn't matter to a certain extent. Anyway, yeah, that was my home instance, and if you want to get map completion, you actually do have to dip in there. And for the humans in particular, there's a lot of stuff going on. But one of the points of interest is the orphanage, the other one is the hospital. They actually feature very, very prominently in some of the human personal story stuff where you get to choose which of them you save. For alternate races, it's kind of weird. Like, the best way to go through Guild Wars in terms of making all the right choices is not to pick a human in a certain way or certain biography choices, because then the hospital will always be fine and the orphanage will always be fine, and, you know, neither of them will get burned down or attacked or whatever. It's kind of a funny thought, I think. So anyway, this is a beautiful area as well. Post-release update right here at the Lissa waypoint. Coolest of the gods, might I add. You notice there is this portal. That never used to be there. And you'll also notice that the portal has a big cross over the front of it. That's because the character I'm playing right now does not have access to that Living World update, low level. But after the release of the game, they did add that gate that lets you go out north. One of the reasons that is so cool is many years ago, the world map art used to look different in Guild Wars 2. It wasn't the big painterly thing we see now. It was a different kind of art. You can check it. I've done a video. If you go to Wood Potatoes, type Guild Wars 2 maps, you'll see I show you all the maps through the history of the whole franchise, including some really amazing maps from even predating Guild Wars 1. Anyway, one of those maps suggested there was a doorway to the north of the city that you could leave. And of course, we know why that's there through data mining. It's because originally the devs were going to add Lake Doric. Then Lake Doric never got implemented. The game released. Time passes, time passes, time passes. And then in one of the Living World seasons, Lake Doric is finally added. And what did they do? They added the exact gate in the same area that the map art had hinted all that time ago. It's beautiful. And I just love little moments like that where I can imagine a new player is captivated by that portal, like, oh, I want to go through there, I want to explore there. I think that you'd get really, really excited and you know, enticed, only to then find out, oh, it's a part of this broader story. Okay, cool, I'll play the broader story. Oh, I need some gems. Okay, cool, so I'll go grind for gold, and now I'm learning about fractals, and now I'm learning about raids, and I'm learning about world bosses, and oh my god, this game's huge, and there's loads to do, and I really just like that a lot. You'll also notice on the inner ring of Divinity's Reach here, there are charter houses to the Vigil and the Dermot Priory. That happens in a lot of the cities you'll be seeing as these bonus videos go along on the playlist. There's very rarely anything to do with the Order of Whispers, at least out in the open. But the idea is that players are kind of encouraged to learn about those orders here in the very early game. And then later, when the opportunity to join one presents itself in the story, you kind of know a bit about them. But it was always very awkwardly done. And in fact, I remember during the alpha phase for the game, someone had posted some feedback specifically about this issue. And I remember got a developer response on the forums saying, hey, yeah, we're looking at this. We want people to know more about the Dermot Priory and the Vigil before it comes up in the story. We're going to lead you around a bit more. And then nothing ever happened from it, unfortunately. Another update after release, by the way, the Dead End Bar. You can actually go inside there, but all you have to do is run your face against the entrance, and you get the point of interest. I wonder if the devs did it that way so that people who don't know about the bar or its inhabitants, Marjorie and so on in particular, whether, you know, maybe you can't access it or they just don't want you to go inside. It's really nice in the bar. The lighting's brilliant. There's like this cool fireplace that casts these massive shadows if you walk near it on the wall behind you. Very, very ambient. And it's a cool name for a bar. So yeah, there's just so much history and so many cool things in this city. This place in particular as well, there's no reason to go there for map comp, but look down there. Look at all these NPCs moving. The devs, when they were very first introducing this to the player base, were talking about all the voice acting in the game, and ambient voice acting in particular. And it's funny because there's not actually that much ambient voice acting in that corridor, but there is like an ambient environment effect that sounds like a crowd chattering. It's not really VA. It's not like they really have anything great to say down there. But the devs always used to take people on tours through that corridor and tell you all about all the voice acting. And it's still true that there's loads of NPCs there. Also, these beautiful aquariums. You can break into these. I've spent a long time messing with those. I have some very happy personal memories of someone whispering me, who shall remain nameless, but appears in many of my videos. And the first time I ever talked to her, she was a fan of just the game and showed me how to break into those many years ago. Another cool thing is the bank and trading post area. Each spoke of the Great Wheel is represented by one of the gods. And I think it's really fitting and cool that Dwayna is the god for the bank and trading post. These gardens are incredible. I mean, it's a shame that there's so little map completion because I could talk for hours about this map. This Ori is insanely cool. Really beautiful. If you go up to the politician area, there's so many cool things to see there, like in terms of art on the walls and a world map that you're walking around on. Lots of great personal story there. Some of the gates here actually have like code that they can be dynamically pulled up and down. Here, not only do you have to go into the home instance, but you've got to walk in here as well, the Vigil headquarters. Look at how beautiful these areas are. The Vigil headquarters has got like an upstairs and a downstairs, which is used in the story step. And then we're going to have to do the same in the throne room and this god temple as well in a second, where we get even more representations of the various gods. I once had an idea that Guild Wars 2 story could have branched around Claw Island, where you've got like a choice. Do you want to stay dealing with domestic stuff, or do you want to go after the Elder Dragons? If you chose staying with the domestic stuff, you'd really get in and dive into this incredibly detailed place that unfortunately just doesn't have that much content and incentive for players. And that sounds crazy to me sometimes, because I'm like, look, there's more than enough content in the game. But at the same time, look at how beautiful this place is. And it makes me feel hollow with how unused so much of it is. But I mean, there was a Living World episode that kind of ended in this room. Pretty cool. And there you have it. A very brief, quick map tour of Divinity's Reach. I love this city. It's so badass. Make sure if you are a new player, or even an existing player, you spend some time really looking around. Get to grips with these places. Talk to the NPCs. I can guarantee you will have missed out on a lot of stuff. Thanks, guys. I'll see you for the next one very soon.